Anthony Albanese is one of those politicians who can make a room laugh, charm a crowd, and still get down to serious business. He's the kind of leader who doesn't mind cracking a joke, but when it comes to leading Australia, he means business. From humble beginnings to the highest political office in the country, his journey is as inspiring as it is fascinating. Let's start with the basics. Who is Anthony Albanese? Born and raised in Sydney, he has quite a unique background. Unlike many politicians who come from privileged families with powerful connections, Albanese's childhood was a bit different. He grew up in public housing with a single mother who did everything she could to make ends meet. It's not every day you hear of a prime minister who once lived in government housing, but that's what makes his story stand out. Now let's talk about his age. Anthony Albanese is not the youngest, not the oldest. He's in that sweet spot where he's experienced enough to run the country but not too old to lose touch with the modern world. If you look at him, he's got that classic Aussie dad energy, the kind of guy who probably has a strong opinion on footy, enjoys a good meat pie, and isn't afraid to have a bit of a laugh. His personal life is also quite interesting. He was married to Carmel Tebbit, who was once the Deputy Premier of New South Wales. That's right, imagine a political power couple where both partners are running parts of the government. It's like Australia's version of House of Cards, but with fewer scandals and more barbecues. Two separated after many years together, and Albanese later found love again with Jodie Hayden, who is known for her work in finance. You can say he's got good taste, first in politics, then in relationships. When it comes to education, Albanese took a different path compared to many world leaders. Some prime ministers go to elite private schools with tuition fees that could buy a small house, but not Albo. He attended St. Mary's Cathedral College in Sydney before moving on to the University of Sydney. He studied economics, a smart choice because let's be honest, when you're running a country you need to know how money works. Imagine running Australia without knowing basic economics. You'd be promising free Tim Tams for everyone without realizing the budget would collapse overnight. One thing that sets Albanese apart is his love for music. He's not the kind of politician who just listens to classical music and pretends to enjoy it. No, he's a real music lover. He's even DJ'd at events, spinning records and making the crowd go wild. Imagine showing up at a party and realizing the DJ is the Prime Minister. It's probably the only time you'd hear a government speech mixed with a killer beat. Now let's talk about his personality. Albanese is known for being down to earth. He's the kind of leader who doesn't just shake hands with world leaders but also stops for a chat with a random Aussie at the pub. If you've ever seen him during election campaigns, you'd notice that he's always up for a selfie, a handshake, or a chat about what's wrong with the local train system. He's got that friendly neighbor vibe, except his neighborhood is the entire country. Thinking of humor, he's not afraid to crack a joke, even when the cameras are rolling. Once, during an interview, he was asked about his music taste and he casually mentioned that he loves the Ramones. Now imagine world leaders at a serious political summit and suddenly Australia's PM starts talking about punk rock. If international politics had a soundtrack, Albo would probably pick something loud and rebellious. Food is another interesting topic when it comes to Albanese. He's a proud Italian-Australian, which means he knows his way around a plate of pasta. If you ever invite him for dinner, don't serve bad spaghetti, he'll know. There's even a running joke that if he ever loses an election, he might just open up a restaurant. Picture it, Albo's Italian kitchen, where the menu is filled with great pasta and every meal comes with a side of political discussion. Now let's talk about his approach to leadership. He's a big believer in fairness and equality, and he spent decades fighting for workers' rights, social justice, and a better deal for everyday Australians. He's not one of those politicians who just talks about issues, he actually gets involved. Whether it's fighting for better wages or addressing climate change, he's got a track record of rolling up his sleeves and getting things done. But of course, no politician is perfect. Like every leader, he's had his fair share of political blunders and awkward moments. One time, he was asked about the national unemployment rate and he totally blanked. We've all been there, like when you're in an exam and suddenly forget everything you studied. But instead of panicking, he laughed it off, owned up to it, and moved on. That's the kind of honesty people appreciate. It's refreshing compared to politicians who try to pretend they know everything. His leadership style is also quite different. Some leaders like to rule with an iron fist, others like to give long, serious speeches. Albanese? He's more of a let's have a chat and figure things out type of leader. He's the kind of guy who could probably convince a kangaroo to attend a cabinet meeting just by being friendly. When he's not busy running the country, he enjoys sports, especially rugby league. He's a big fan of the South Sydney Rabbitohs and he takes his team seriously. If you ever want to see him get passionate about something, just bring up footy. There's a good chance he has more opinions on rugby league than on economic policy. Another thing people love about Albanese is that he's not afraid to show his true personality. Some politicians are so polished that they seem like robots, but Albo is different. He'll show up in a suit one day and in a casual t-shirt the next. He'll give a speech at Parliament in the morning and then DJ at a community event in the evening. If Australia had a most relatable leader contest, he'd probably win by a landslide. At the end of the day, Anthony Albanese is a leader who connects with people. He's got the experience, the humor, and the ability to navigate tough political waters. Whether he's debating policy, enjoying music, or passionately supporting his footy team, he's a prime minister who feels like someone you could actually have a beer with. And in a world where politicians often seem distant from everyday life, that's a rare and valuable thing.